Welcome to Impact Moment right here on DCTV. I'm Alvin Jones, and today I have the pleasure of sharing with you a lady who is the Deputy Director of the Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and they do some great things for people. Kara Bundy, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you again. It's good to be able to share information right here on Impact Moment.
Yes.
Let's talk about CASA and what it does for folks and why it's important.
Awesome. So Court-Appointed Special Advocate works with kids in foster care who are living in foster care due to the abuse or neglect they have experienced. So when a child has been abused or neglected and the court has decided that they need to be removed from their home and put into foster care, they are then overseen by judges and magistrates who make decisions about what needs to happen in that child's life. CASA comes in when children need somebody who can stand up for their best interests. So we train citizen volunteers, people like you or I, who just have some extra time and a passion for helping kids. And we work with them so that they can be working one-on-one with a child or teenager in foster care to advocate for what's in their best interest. So when a child comes into foster care, there are several adults working with them. So they have a social worker who's there to place them in a safe foster home, make sure that they are enrolled in school, that they have, doctor's appointments and things like that lined up. They also do have an attorney who is there to advocate for what's called their expressed wishes. So in Maryland, children as young as 8 can have their expressed wishes advocated for. So if a child wants to go home to mom or dad who hasn't made any changes since the abuse or neglect has occurred, that's what their attorney is going to advocate for. And then of course the parents often have their own attorneys. But what we do that's different is the CASA volunteers are there to advocate for best interests. So we know, that there are resource constraints, that there are time constraints, but we are there to make sure that children are getting what they need, regardless of what is convenient, what works for everybody. We are really focused on what's in the child's best interest. Our volunteers also are the only one that's working one-on-one with the child. So the social worker might have 20 different cases, so they are spending their time putting out fires, handling emergencies, and might be able to see the child once a month. Attorneys have upwards of 100 cases, so if they get an opportunity to see the kid in the hallway before the hearing starts, that's great, but they don't have an opportunity to spend much more time on the case than that. Whereas the volunteer is working just with that child. They are spending 10 to 15 hours a month on average, getting to know that child, talking to the adults in their life, the parents, the social workers, teachers. So they actually have a court order that grants them access to everything that is going on with that child. They can even talk to therapists and doctors to understand everything that's going on with that child, to really look at the big picture. And like I said, not just be focused on checking boxes, but figuring out what is really best for that child.
Well, it's almost like it's that child's investigative report. It goes through everything to find out what the child needs, what he likes, what's the impacts, and how it happens. And what I like about the advocates is that they're dealing directly with one child. They're not split in between. What type of special training does a person have to be given to be an advocate?
So to be an advocate, people don't have to have any specific educational or work experience. There are some requirements, like they have to be at least 21. They have to pass a background screening. Obviously, we want to make sure that we are having only the most appropriate volunteers. But we actually provide the training that they need in order to be a CASA volunteer. So right now, with COVID and everything going on, we're doing training online. So we have 30 hours of training. It's a combination of live, online training with a facilitator and then independent work that they're doing, but we are teaching them everything from child development, cycles of poverty and abuse, as well as the role of the CASA, how to write court reports, how to prepare for court hearings. And then once they are assigned to a case, they actually have a case supervisor So we have professional staff who, again, come from a variety of backgrounds to make sure that in our office we have expertise in all areas, whether that means that we have a medically fragile child, a child who has a lot of educational issues. We have staff who can address all those issues. And so they are constantly working with the volunteers to make sure that the volunteers know the priorities of the case. That's who volunteers can call when something happens and they don't know what to do. So they're really there to support them. So it's not required to have any particular background because we give our volunteers the tools they need to be a CASA volunteer.
Wow, that's fantastic. One of the things what was just on my mind with this, what are the special needs that are going on now that you have COVID? Have you seen a change in the children that come through the door that need advocates?
Sure. So there is a lot that has changed. Mid-March, like most organizations, our office shut down and moved to remote work. Our work never stopped. Our staff were working online. And in fact, our volunteers have increased how frequently they are communicating with the children. So prior to COVID, volunteers were required to see the child at least twice a month. Our volunteers are now having weekly phone and video calls with the youth to make sure that we know what's going on. We know that children's routines have been disrupted. Often therapy has been disrupted. Visitation with parents and siblings has been disrupted. And that creates an additional trauma for our youth. So there are a lot of articles out about how all youth, regardless of their situation right now, are experiencing a form of childhood trauma because of the lockdown and everything that means. But our children are experiencing additional traumas because of the disruptions to basic things like being able to see their family. So our volunteers are working very hard to make sure that we know what's going on, that we can respond to mental health crises. We were very fortunate to get a grant that we were able to utilize to help particularly those older foster youth living in group homes. So we have older kids who are in independent living and are likely to stay in foster care until they age out. So those youth obviously have a lot more needs. So we've gotten grocery cards for them. We are helping them with cell phone bills. We've been able to purchase masks and cleaning supplies for them. So the needs have definitely shifted. Our work has never stopped and indeed has increased. But what we are also looking at is the expected increase in need for CASA volunteers. So we know that in any crises, whether it's an economic crisis or otherwise, abuse increases. And there have been a lot of reports about the increases of domestic violence in the region, but what we're not seeing yet is the increases in child abuse that we know are happening. In April, the Department of Human Resources in Maryland actually reported a 78% decrease in the reports of child abuse from the same period the year prior. And that's because children are not being exposed to the people who would normally be reporting the abuse. They're not being exposed to teachers, community members, coaches.
Right. Because these are the people who see what's going on.
Exactly.
But when it's inside, the parent's not going to report it if
Exactly.
they're doing it. So let me ask you this. What is it that CASA needs? And what is it that CASA is saying to folks to come to you for?
Sure. So what we really need right now is more volunteers. We need more people to step up and say, I want to change a child's story.
For DCTV, I'm Alvin Jones, and this has been another Impact Moment.